Hello, fellow Redbirds. Welcome to Bird Fans Forever podcast number 69. Today we're talking NIL, Name, Image, and Likeness with Brennan White, Director of NIL at Illinois State. Brennan is leading the charge in creating opportunities for Redbird athletes, helping them build their brands and connect with the community. We'll break down how the NIL collective works and how fans can support the movement. And don't forget to slam dunk the subscribe button. Let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to Bird Fans Forever, episode 69 with Brennan White. He is the Director of Name, Image, and Likeness at Illinois State. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, John. Great to be here.
Thank you for bearing with us. This is take two, actually, for everybody watching. I mean, we're not going to sugarcoat it. So, all right, so walk us through your journey and how you became National Image Likeness Director at Illinois State.
Yeah, so it was kind of an abnormal journey for me. So, I've been involved in sports my entire life. Grew up in a very small farm town about 20 minutes south of Springfield, Illinois. So, from the state of Illinois originally. I went to play football at Monmouth College, which is a Division III school in Northwest Illinois. Was fortunate enough to be a part of a lot of conference championships there. But I knew I wanted to be more on the business side of sports. So I was fortunate enough, I applied to grad school at Illinois State, was fortunate enough to be accepted into their sport management program. And then when I got here at Illinois State, I was a graduate assistant for 2 years for our track and field team. I was the director of operations, so I handled a lot of day-to-day things for the track and field team, like hotels, buses, and meals. And then when I graduated in May of 2023, I noticed that this position had come open, and I applied to it, kind of got my foot in the door, and 3 months later I was fortunate enough to accept the full-time role in August of 2023, and here we are.
That is awesome. All right, so walk us through what a typical day looks like being the NL, National Image and Likeness. Most everybody knows on the podcast I'm dyslexic. This NIL, and Brennan and I were kind of laughing. I said it in our first take because I signed a national letter of intent, which doesn't, like you said, doesn't even exist anymore, right? So, all right. So, what does a day look like for the Name, Image, and Likeness Director?
It's like a box of chocolates, man. You never know what you're going to get, and I love every second of it. I'm so fortunate to be a part of our great team at Illinois State Athletics, and most importantly, to get to show up and serve our student athletes every single day. A day in the life it's really evolved over the last 18 months. I think my job description has changed probably 5 or 6 times since I was hired in August of 2023, and when I originally came in. Our state law was very, very restrictive. And for those that don't know, when it comes to NIL regulations, the NCAA has guidelines, but they ultimately left it up to the states and institutions to create their own laws and policies. So, for example, what a law is in Texas may not be a law in Illinois. So when I got here, it was very restrictive. I couldn't have much involvement with our collective. I really couldn't have much involvement with the business negotiation process in terms of true, authentic NIL. And as time evolved and as people started to learn more about it, our law opened up, and now I'm allowed to negotiate, facilitate, and arrange on behalf of our student athletes. So that means I can essentially go out in the community and broker deals on behalf of our student athletes with local or national businesses.
Wow.
But an overall day in the life, right now it's very, very hectic in the transfer portal. Men's and women's basketball is getting ready to close, but the football spring transfer portal just opened. So a lot of it right now is, meeting with coaches to go over budgets from the collective, discuss, who's going to get into the portal, who are we going to bring in from a transfer perspective. I am the direct liaison to all head coaches, all 450 student athletes. So anything and everything NIL related, in terms of what the student athletes may need, they come to me. We have a great team though as well. That's what I always say is I'm so fortunate to be a part of, with myself as the director of NIL, Dayton Hamus, as the director of social media and NIL student athlete branding. So Dayton handles more of like the social media side or influencer side of things when it comes to NIL, and she does a great job with that. And then Paul Cabas is my direct supervisor. He's our deputy athletic director, and he oversees all external operations. So a day in the life could be meeting with several recruits from several different sports. It could be meeting with local businesses to discuss possible partnerships where they're going to do deals with our student athletes. I just had one today with a local fitness company here in Bloomington Normal.
Wow.
It could be working with Redbird Sports Properties on the corporate partnership side for people that want to include NIL and as a part of their deals. Meeting with coaches directly. Meeting with NIL agents is now a thing. So it's you really never know what you're going to get, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of it.
So Brendan, how does Illinois State approaching NIL perhaps differently than other schools like in the mid-major programs?
I think one of the fortunate things about Illinois State is that we've embraced it. NIL is here and it's not going anywhere. And regardless if people like it or not, unfortunately that just doesn't matter anymore because, schools are going to embrace NIL and, we're one of those schools that has chosen to do so. I still believe I'm one of the only director of NILs in the entire Missouri Valley Conference.
Really?
Now, don't quote me on that. There might be some schools that have, a person doing it, but that's my full-time gig. So we're very, very fortunate to have the resources that we do here at Illinois State and investing into our student athletes to make sure that we offer them a premium student athlete experience. And I think that's what it's all about. And it's really a credit to the community of Bloomington Normal. That's a huge reason why we have success right now. And it takes a village to run an NIL program. It really does. And from starting out where we did with the collective and Empower the Nest, I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. And what it's grown into today is just night and day different. So, it's just, it's a huge, huge deal for us. And we're very, very grateful to have the supportive fans and community that we do.
So those resources for those students, I'm sure some of it's like educating them and getting them familiar, whether it's social media, even though the young students are probably better than we are at social media. But talk about some of those resources. You mentioned the people, but some of the activities and some of the education that you guys give those student athletes.
Yeah, so education is the biggest piece. I work in NIL every day, and it's confusing enough as it is for me, so I can only imagine what it's like for our student athletes who already have a full plate of, training, practice, games, not to mention getting a top-tier education. And now NIL is just another piece in that pie. So in the fall, when everybody comes back, we meet with all 17 varsity sports, and we have an NIL education session, and we update, where we are at, where our state law is at, and most importantly, what our approach is, because we believe in full transparency, and we try and make sure that our student athletes understand what name, image, and likeness is and how to get involved. Some student athletes want nothing to do with it. Others are completely bought in, and they want to be a part of it. So that could be anything from helping them build their brand, launching NIL merchandise, understanding how to professionalize their social media, because that's a big aspect of it when businesses go and look at their social media profiles, making sure you have the right things on there that are going to reflect who you are as a person. So developing their social media, and a big one is financial literacy. Right now there's a lot of money in college athletics, and the thing that I never want to stop doing is putting our student athletes first to make sure that we prepare them for life. NIL is great. I think it's awesome that they can monetize their name, image, and likeness. But at the end of the day, 1% of student athletes go pro. So we need to continue doing an exceptional job and making sure that we're setting these student athletes up in addition to their top tier education that they're going to get at Illinois State, their experience as a student athlete. NIL is now just another advantage they have to get ahead and before, real life kicks in. So, those are kind of my big pieces, just making sure that we protect them at all costs and do everything we can to set them up for success.
So, Brennan, tell us how important is the local business and community in Illinois State's initiatives for NIL? And then if they are interested, what's the process that they can go through to get involved?
That's a very great question, Steve. I think it's honestly tough to put it into words how important it is because, our NIL success is based off of, our community support. And, community is everything. I always say NIL is not just all about the money. It's about community and relationships. And for the local businesses here, especially in Bloomington Normal, it's going to continue to be key moving forward. And they've done a great job already in terms of buying in and supporting our student athletes, but that's only going to have to continue as we continue to grow the collective, NIL at Illinois State, and to want to compete for championships. It's just part of the landscape right now. So, I would say again, it's vital to our success, and it's truly going to take everybody. But the best thing is, I think we have the best community in the Valley and in the nation as well that's set up for success here in Bloomington Normal. If you look at the amount of businesses and just fans that love the Redbirds, it's truly a very, very special place to be. I always say I hope our student athletes know how fortunate they are to play for a community in a town like Bloomington Normal. As far as getting in touch or how to get involved, reach out to myself, shoot me an email, come by my office, whatever it may be, and we'll make it happen. And I know our student athletes are always looking for new businesses to partner with, whether that's compensation in form of cash, gift in kind. We have so many incredible student athletes that have great brands outside of who they are as just a student athlete. I think too often than not, we think of these student athletes just as commodities, but they're human beings at the end of the day, and they all have such unique individual stories that make them so much more than a student athlete. And, I think a lot of businesses, in my opinion, might be slightly biased, but, they would be missing out not supporting these young men and women. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if they want to get involved, get in touch with me, call my office phone, shoot me an email, and we'll get the ball rolling, and we'll make sure that, we get everything set up and taken care of.
So do you have a couple brand success stories that you could talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a number as we've continued to grow this. I'd say one in specific, a unique deal that we did. It was the first team NIL deal that we did this year with our women's basketball team. We approached Blono Pizza Company and discussed doing some form of an NIL deal with women's basketball. We just didn't know what it would entail. And I sat down with their owner, Brett Matthews. He's a great guy. He's a season ticket holder for our women's basketball team. He's a huge supporter. They're one of our corporate partners. And we came up with the idea of promoting their new restaurant, Westside Smoke. And he basically told me, he's like, I'll leave it up to you and you figure it out. So I channeled my inner producer, and we decided that we wanted to put together a commercial for them with the entire women's basketball team. So coordinating with all of our student athletes and their schedules, our creative team, and then I actually got to write the entire skit. So keeping that group serious was a task in itself. But they were great to work with, and Blono Pizza Company is a great partner of ours, and we were able to take that commercial and put it up on the video board during halftime of one of their games. And we got really good feedback from it. It was a super cheesy commercial, but everybody loved it. And I think the young women were just so happy to be a part of something like that. Because like I said, outside of the collective, that was truly the first team deal that we did. So everybody from seniors all the way down to freshmen got to participate in that. And that's what I love about NIL so much. I think too often we think of NIL as, a very individual based thing. And it was just fun to see the entire team come together and to support Blono Pizza Company as much as they support our young women.
I assume if they go through you, they can use the Redbird and the Illinois State logos then?
Correct. Yeah. So Bologna Pizza Company, they are a corporate partner through Learfield with Redbird Sports Properties. So they've paid a certain fee to use our IP, which is intellectual property. So that's logos, trademarks, facilities, different things of that nature. So they were allowed to, have the ladies in uniform, have the Redbird logo appeared and to be on our facilities. But that brings up a very good point. Unless a business has paid to use our IP, the student athletes cannot be in Redbird logos, because just like the student athletes own their name, image, and likeness, so does the university as well.
Okay. So it's best to go through you versus just reaching out and contacting an individual student then.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Great.
All right, Brennan. What is your favorite, what is your Redbird sports moment, your favorite one so far?
Yeah, there's two that come to mind. The Doug Collins day was really, really cool for me and getting to meet him, but I would definitely say my favorite moment, which incorporated a little bit of name, image, and likeness into it, was the Bradley game, where we knocked them off at home for the first time in quite a while, and Johnny has that moment with the bloody eye, and in less than 24 hours, our team internally in the athletic department, we were able to capitalize on that moment for him and create that t-shirt, the Victory Runs Red t-shirt, which was extremely popular with our fan base. So you killed two birds with one stone there in terms of getting to beat Bradley. There's no love lost in that rivalry, absolutely at all. I don't feel sorry for them. And Johnny having that really cool moment. He and I, we talked about it today when I met with him. So it was cool to be a part of something like that, and just for our team to be able to turn that around so quickly. Again, it just speaks volume to the resources that we have in place, ready to roll for our student athletes to make sure that again that we're capitalizing on those things.
And to show how successful it was.
Yeah,
it was top seven.
Yeah. Johnny
all
was
sports, all universities.
Yeah.
Johnny was the seventh highest earning athlete in the nation through Campus Inc. with the NIL store. So that's the website that the t-shirt was launched on. He was the seventh highest earning athlete in the month of February of 2025. And then that item, the Victory Runs Red t-shirt, was the fifth highest selling item. And we're one of the only mid-majors to be in that group. And currently, we're the number 4 selling campus across the entire nation.
Wow.
So, you're talking about a lot of people in that group. I believe the University of Illinois is in that category. And then there's a couple other pretty big Power Fours, but we're the only mid-major to be in that category. So, again, it goes back to our resources that we have in the department and the incredible team. But, again, our support from our community. That's what makes all of this possible. And again, we're so extremely fortunate to have that.
All right, Brennan, we've had on Empower the Nest. Underneath that is the 1998 Club, but also underneath that is Fly With Us, the women's side of women's basketball for their name, image, and likeness. Can you speak to that one and tell us all about that?
Yeah. So we created Fly With Us shortly after the 1998 Club was created, and it's simply a sports-specific collective specifically for women's basketball. It falls under the Empower the Nest umbrella, just as the 1998 Club does. So it's all under Empower the Nest, but it's just an additional fundraising arm specifically for our women's basketball team, because obviously those are your two main sports that are being impacted right now by name, image, and likeness, in addition to football. So we wanted to create an image that fans could associate women's basketball with. And, in working with Jason Higdon, the president of Empower the Nest, and also Coach Gillespie to get her take on it and make sure that, we're taking her into account, because at the end of the day, her staff, herself, and the team are the ones that are impacted this by the most. So again, we wanted to make sure that we were being mindful of, putting the team first and our student athletes and taking care of them. We launched Fly With Us in the summer of 2024. We had a fundraising event out at Blono Pizza Company. They were fortunate enough that they donated some space to us out there. We had a really, really good turnout, and we've continued to build off that momentum for them.
That is awesome. Now, the Blono Pizza deal that you talked about earlier about in the thing, would that have flown up through the Come Fly With Us and then through the Empower the Nets? That's how that kind of worked?
Yeah, in a way. So I negotiated the deal with Brett Matthews, and we just talked about fulfillment. And then Brett wrote the check that the student athletes would be paid for through Empower the Nest, and then Empower the Nest distributed the dollars to the female student athletes. So they received both gift in kind and cash for that deal with Blono Pizza Company.
Very cool.
So again, just another plug for them. They're a great partner, and they do so much for our student athletes.
How many of the Missouri Valley teams have a collective just for women's basketball?
It's always tough to tell. Not everybody shows their cards. I would say that probably the top 5 teams in the Missouri Valley on the women's side are pretty competitive. And without getting into numbers and revealing what we have, I would go out and say that we're probably going to have one of the top collectives, if not the top collective, for women's basketball going into the 2025-2026 season.
Awesome.
We've established that NIL is here, and we want to make sure that we're the best at it, not just in the Missouri Valley, but at a national level. Because we want to make sure that we set our student athletes up for success to win championships in the Valley and get to the big dance. And I know Coach Gillespie is 100% behind the Fly With Us movement. She supports it. And again, it just goes back to our community. We're so grateful to have communities that support football, men's and women's basketball, and it really makes a difference in our success.
That's awesome. Hey, so Brennan, you talked about how creative you are, writing scripts for Blono Pizza, instantaneously turning around, Victory Runs Red, and that initiative. So we're going to put you on the spot here. We're going to roll you back. So you played at Monmouth. Tell us about how you would brand yourself these days at Monmouth.
I would just be true to who I am. I'm very interested in health and wellness, self-development, and just making people around me better. And so when I'm branding myself, I want to brand myself more than a student athlete, because football was just something that I did, but it's not who I was as a person. Whether that's creating t-shirts or trying to get people to be a healthier version of themselves, just having an impact on the peers around me and the people that support me most would be my overall objective.
That's great advice. And just some of the athletes should just listen to that. And that's probably how they can make the best connection to the community anyways, right?
Yeah, man. I always say being yourself is the best approach to NIL, because people love authenticity, and people, especially business owners, are going to be able to sniff out whether you're being authentic or not, or trying to, create an image of yourself that isn't true to who you are. And again, when you bring your true self out in terms of name, image, and likeness, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with nowadays because of social media and trying to be someone you're not, quote unquote. So I think that's truly a challenge right now because of, in the world of Instagram with clicks, likes, and shares and, going viral, it's tough to put who you really are out there,
right,
and be okay with it, because we're all so worried about people pleasing or being judged. And at the end of the day, my greatest life advice I was given was, why would you listen to the opinions of people you would never ask advice from? So just plugging that in there for all the student athletes right now. But that's just something I'm very, very passionate about. And thankfully I'm in a position as the director of NIL to spread that to our student athletes.
Yeah, I think that's why, being themselves, I think that's why Chase and Johnny, right? The basketball team is doing better. and they won the CBI, and that plays a part of it. But it's also them being themselves and Dalton and letting themselves shine through. And then people see that and they begin to embrace it. And they're not the same, people. Dalton's different than Chase, who's different than Ty, and they just need to be themselves. And then people gravitate towards them.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty about it. And we're so fortunate for the student athletes that we have, because they've been a joy to work with for me, and they make my job 100 times easier because they do just that. They show up and they're themselves, and they don't try to be anything more than that. And I think as a student athlete, like, they have enough on their plate as it is, and with the pressure that comes of winning and playing in front of this community, I'm sure it's challenging at times. It really is, because there's a lot more on the line these days in the current landscape of college athletics that we now live in. So just extremely grateful for the type of charactered student athletes that we have, and very, very grateful to show up and serve them every single day, because that's why we do our jobs, is because of them.
All right, Brennan, this is closing. The floor is yours.
Yeah, just wanted to thank you guys for having me on. It's a privilege to be here representing Illinois State athletics and our student athletes, and obviously the collective with Empower the Nest. And I would just urge our community, to anybody watching this, whether you like NIL or not, I completely understand it. But at the end of the day, this is the future of college athletics, and those that embrace it are going to be really successful, and those that don't, we'll see where the cards fall. But it's going to take endless support from the community of Bloomington Normal, and everyone's already done a really great job, but we're really going to need everyone to step up as we continue to navigate this new space of college athletics. So again, just very grateful for you guys having me on, and very grateful to serve our student athletes every single day and represent the Redbirds.
Brennan, that is awesome. And go out and support Fly With Us, the ladies women's basketball collective. We've already talked about Empower the Nest and 1998 Club, so we're really pushing this episode. Come fly with us. All right, so with that being said, this has been episode 69 of the Bird Fans Forever podcast with Brennan White, the Name, Image, and Likeness Director for Illinois State. You notice I didn't say NIL. I don't even know if I got it right there. John, hit it.